At this point, I think it's fair to say that Total War Warhammer 3 is a pretty good game. Sure, it has its flaws and certainly has had a very rocky road to get where it is, but as it stands today, it's the pinnacle of the series and the go-to for anyone looking to get into the world of Total War Warhammer. But that doesn't mean it's perfect. In fact, there's a lot of things in-game that grind our gears, so today I'm going to count down the top 10 things Warhammer 3 players hate. And if you hate these videos being interrupted by ads, then you should become a channel member. All the same videos with none of the ads, all for just $1 a month. Become a member at the join button below, and now, let's get into the list. In no particular order, we are starting with a true classic, which is every single update breaking all of your mods. This one is an easy slam dunk because anyone who mods Warhammer 3 knows this pain all too well. You play in a modded campaign and there's no DLC in sight, so you feel relatively safe that your saves should be, safe. You boot up your computer, log into Steam and see Warhammer 3 downloading something. Turns out CA decided to do their jobs for once and released a minor patch to fix some bug. I mean, that's fair enough. Surely that won't be enough to break your saves. You would be wrong. It not only breaks all of your mods, but all of those saves that you had are also worthless and totally unrecoverable. It's actually astonishing how much every single tiny update breaks every single mod on the workshop. The effort CA is putting into untangling the spaghetti code is admirable, but you have to feel for the mod makers who need to learn this new spaghetti layout each and every time there's a 300 kilobyte update to give Cal more resolution on his crimson chin. If you play modded, do yourself a favour and just disable automatic updates. Next up we have Peculiar Pathing. The wonderful map that is Immortal Empires is truly a marvel. You can get from one end to the other all in the space of a single campaign, and most of it without ever having to touch the water. However, why, God why, does pathing sometimes take the most absurd route possible to your destination? Let's say you're going from your settlement to attack the enemies. Logic would say let's go head on so that any enemy attacks into our lands have to go through your army. However, pathing would say, well, if you consider taking a detour around the Burger King instead, leaving this big old gaper straight into your lands ripe for the plundering. Now I know that the terrain of the Immortal Empires map isn't flat and sometimes there's obstacles like rivers in the way, but I swear half the time there is nothing stopping my armies from taking the direct route other than they just don't feel like it. It's annoying when attacking, but also if you're just trying to get around and the game feels like moving you out of your own lands, so no replenishment for you. It's inconsistent and annoying, and so it's going on the list. A lot of actions in Warhammer 3 have a success chance associated with them. Ambushes, hero actions and more have a percentage chance to succeed, and that is hard maths that cannot be disputed. However, sometimes it just feels like I'm being lied to. I feel like I can have a 98% chance to succeed and still find a way to fail. Now I know that technically I still have a 2% chance to fail, but that's 2 in every 100 tries, so it feels a little rough when I don't come out on top. It's especially annoying since most chances in this game come with some pretty steep consequences for failure. Fail to ambush this army, well they attack you, and without the ambush, the fight is a lot more difficult. Fail to assassinate this hero, well your hero is now wounded and can't do anything for a few turns. Fail to defend the enemy ambush, oopsie, your army is gone. I know that I cannot win them all, but I swear sometimes it feels like I genuinely will not win any of them. In the early game, a lot of battles can be dealt with via auto-resolve. This saves you time and allows your campaign to have a nice quick pace towards the mid-game, where things tend to get a lot more interesting. However, there will occasionally be a battle that just decides you should lose half of your army despite the fact it's an easy win. You have more army power, a bunch of ranged units and a decent half-health front line, but apparently that means the only thing to survive should be your lord. And speaking of the lord, I have a single question for him. Why was I born like this? Alright, 2 questions. Why are you wasting my precious time on this earth with battles like this? If you play them manually, you easily win without putting in much effort and most importantly, without losing anywhere near the amount of units the auto-resolve said you would. I am by no means a great battler in this game, but even I know that the load times between battle and campaign will take longer than the battle itself, so why are you insisting that I waste my time with it? Maybe it's just me, but when I get a battle like this, my eyes just roll out of my head, because I know I'm going to be staring at the load screen wondering why I couldn't just press a button and delete this army, rather than have to get my hands dirty and do it myself. Now I don't know about you, but sometimes playing against the AI gets me a little bit paranoid. I can be battling against 2 factions with zero interest in being friends, and yet it seems they work together to attack me in the most vulnerable spot in my territory at the worst possible moment nearly every single time. For example, let's say all of your armies are over in the east of your lands handling a rowdy neighbour. Why is it that whilst you're on your last legs having dealt with the neighbours, someone comes knocking from the west and basically has free reign of your lands since there is no way you'll get back in time? The AI attacking undefended settlements is fine, but I swear they coordinate their attacks to put the most pressure on you possible when it benefits neither of them to work together. I know that I can't see what's going on in enemy lands unless I have a hero over there, so it's hardly fair that they seem to know every move I make and every step I take, and then they can use that to screw me over to the maximum degree. Now for a battle complaint to spice things up. Lords and heroes are some of the most powerful units on any battlefield, adept at taking on a range of threats depending on their playstyle. However, one of my favourites is the Duelist, whose sole job it is to hunt down enemy lords and heroes and take them down in melee. There's just so much aura in hunting down the biggest, baddest threats on the enemy side, only to lose it all when they just run into them like they're trying to get a sniff of the pit. Like, I get it. If there was a battle stinky Isabella in my sights, call me a minor because I'm going straight in the pit. But when we're trying to win a battle, can we maybe just leave that for later? There's nothing more frustrating than sending off your lord to take on theirs, only to realise they've been standing around barely throwing out any attacks because they can't quite stand in the right place. It is especially noticeable if the target is fleeing and extends to most units in the roster. The number of times I've swamped a retreating unit in the middle of my entire army and watched as no one throws a single attack is quite frankly too high. However, lords and heroes do this near constantly, so they're getting themselves on the list. Whilst we're on the topic of battle, I think I'm right in assuming that when it comes to fighting, there are some strategies that are a little bit dishonourable. Corner camping, making a noob square, and playing as the Skaven all come to mind, but the thing about most of these is that the player is the one who has the choice to join the dark side. However, the AI keeps one cheesy strategy up its sleeve that I feel like they use in almost every single battle, and that's pulling through. What I mean by this is, imagine you have a melee line, and behind that are your ranged units. Normally, two sides meet in the middle, the melee troops battle it out to see who comes out on top. However, sometimes the AI decides to ignore your melee troops altogether, and instead just push their units through your front lines and straight into your ranged troops. This obviously disrupts your lines, causes ranged troops to be more at risk, and generally throws a wrench into your battle plans. I wouldn't really mind, except this is literally an issue with the engine and not a legitimate battle strategy, so having the AI do it feels a little bit shitty. It's one thing if a player with sentience decides to cheese, but a computer is just a step too far. Alliances in Warhammer 3 are a bit of a tricky thing. Most of the time they end up dragging you into more wars than they are worth, but occasionally it's worth becoming friends, normally due to some kind of mechanic. The Elector Counts is a good example where Karl is encouraged to keep everyone friendly for future confederations. However, sometimes the AI seems like it's intentionally trying to grind my gears. I can gift a faction a massive lump of territory, eliminate every nearby threat, and basically give them a peaceful utopia to thrive in, and they'll just find some way to screw themselves over. They'll refuse to build up armies and leave their settlements ripe for the taking, or start wars they have no hope of winning just to draw more enemies into their lands. They cannot keep themselves alive, and their lives literally do depend on that, so it can feel pretty hopeless. Like I said, most of the time you can just avoid alliances and move on, but in the campaigns you can't. It really exposes just how dumb the AI can be when it's not running it down mid at your own lands. This is a small one, but it never fails to get me heated during the more stressful moments of my campaigns. It doesn't really matter what's happening, but I'm locked in and go to hit end turn, only to have my view catapulted to some settlements with an empty building slot. Normally, not an issue, but with my tuppence, I only have enough cash to build something worthless, making this notification entirely pointless. However, next turn when I'm still locked in and still have no cash, do you think this notification will get the idea and skip itself? Of course not. It's there once again to move the camera across the map and once again pull away your attention. The issue with this is that these notifications are useful, so I don't want to turn them off altogether, but when I have no goal to build anything useful, can it not get the idea and leave me alone until I have a little more cash to play with? Like I said, it is a small thing, but when it gets you a few turns in a row, it really starts to get annoying. Lastly, I have something that I know irritates me in my poorer campaigns. Locations of interest are a cool mechanic that can occasionally give you something really cool to spice up your campaign. However, they can also be something worthless or worse, detrimental to your game, such as raising a random settlement every few turns. Now of course, you can get rid of bad ones, However, this often costs a pretty hefty chunk of cash, meaning it is no longer a minor convenience, but more so an extortion to avoid future pain. And like I said, this always feels like it happens during campaigns when I'm already dirt poor, so instead of spending cash on a new building or some units, I instead have to save up thousands of gold to get nothing in return other than a lack of annoying penalties. It is the exact opposite of what you want to do when you have no cash, and sometimes the game just decides that it's time for a little extra suffering, and there's really not anything you can do about it. But what I want to know is, what's one thing that you hate about Total War Warhammer 3? Let me know in the comments below, like the video if you did, subscribe for more, and if you want more list videos, check out this one all about a campaign tip for every single race in the game.